So today, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. sat in front of Congress and testified over the budget. He first sat down this morning with the House Appropriations Committee and then later in the afternoon in front of the Senate HELP Committee, which is the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. And of course, the hearings did not go without protesters. Some protesters started bursting out yelling, RFK kills people with AIDS.
Or with less. The budget I'm presenting today supports these goals and reflects.
The witness will suspend. The committee will come to order. Capitol Police are asked to remove the individuals from the hearing room. Members of the audience are reminded disruptions will not be tolerated. Members of the audience are reminded disruptions will not be permitted while the committee conducts its business. Capitol Police are asked to remove the individuals from the hearing room.
Okay, RFK kills people with AIDS is what the protesters were chanting. Are they confused with Anthony Fauci? I think they got that one confused. Okay, what are they referring to? Why are they saying that? That has to do with the budget cuts to the Department of Health and Human Services. People claim that the budget cuts are going to hinder people with AIDS, that people with AIDS are going to die of AIDS because they're not going to get the services that they need. And I think that's why the protesters were chanting RFK kills people with AIDS. But you can't have a hearing without some protesters. That's a little bit far-fetched. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. actually does address what those budget cuts are specifically. In fact, let me go ahead and play for you that. He is talking here to Representative Josh Harder, who's asking him about these Medicaid cuts. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says, you don't know what the hell you're talking about, actually. You're just spouting Democratic talking points. But I'll tell you what those budget cuts are. Watch this.
So, Secretary Kennedy, my question for you is, why do you think that a community like mine doesn't deserve access to that same basic health care provided by Medicaid that you benefited from?
I do believe they have. I do believe, and that is the design of the Medicaid program.
So do you disagree with the cuts that are being proposed for Medicaid right now?
Oh, the cuts to, this is I don't know if you understand this or whether you're just mouthing, the Democratic talking points. The cuts to Medicaid are for fraud, waste, and abuse. And I'll tell you what that means. It means that because of DOGE, we were able to determine, and it's about 8 million people who would be affected. Because of DOGE, we were able to determine that there are 1 million people who are claiming Medicaid from multiple states. That's illegal. It's theft. You're not allowed to do that. There are another 1 million people who are collecting both under Obamacare and
Secretary, that has nothing to do with the budget that's
These are the only
being
cuts that are being made. These are the only cuts that are being made to Medicaid.
That's not true.
Yes, it is. There are another 1 million illegal aliens. We announced a law yesterday, a rule yesterday, we're not going to pay illegal aliens anymore. And guess what Gavin Newsom did this morning? He said we're going to take all the illegal aliens off the California Medicaid rolls because the feds aren't paying for them anymore. So the compassion ends.
Secretary, let me focus you on the actual numbers of the budget that's being proposed. Secretary, I regain my time. I think what you are saying is absolutely inaccurate in terms of the 13 million Americans that will lose access to health care. Let me tell you, the folks in my district are not actually getting Medicaid in another state. They can't travel to get it in another state. The clinics that are providing that life-saving care are the last resort for folks in our area.
Let me tell you the last category. Last category is adults who are able-bodied, who refuse to look for a job, to volunteer, to get a job, or to show that they are or to take a part-time job.
I agree with time. That is absolutely not true. The vast majority of folks in a community like mine who are on Medicaid are working. They want to work. People want to be able to make sure that
they're in no danger of losing their Medicaid.
So there you go. I don't think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has ever been a guy that's about money. So why would anyone think that he's, just out there looking to slash budgets? Like, that's just what he wants to do, and he doesn't care if he leaves people behind. I mean, that's never been his MO. That's not what he's about. So to think that that's what the budget cuts would be is just kind of ludicrous. Going on with the hearing, he is questioned by, this one is from Mark Pocan, Democrat Mark Pocan from Wisconsin, who questions him about the measles vaccine. He actually questions him about polio, chickenpox, measles, asking him specifically, would you vaccinate your children with these vaccines? And I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. handled this brilliantly. Here it is.
Something that might be helpful is you've previously said you've vaccinated your children. Just because I think this is a helpful answer, and this isn't a gotcha, I promise. If you had a child today, would you vaccinate that child for measles?
For measles, probably for measles. What I would say is my opinions about vaccines are irrelevant. I've directed Jay Bhattacharya.
Sure. No, like I said, I don't want to.
So that everybody can make that decision. But I don't want to seem like I'm being evasive.
Yeah.
But I don't think people should be taking medical advice from me.
Right. No, I got that. And I'm not asking you to give them medical advice, but would you vaccinate your child for measles?
If I answer that question directly, that it will seem like I'm giving advice to other people, and I don't want to be doing that. I want people to make.
But that's kind of your jurisdiction because CDC does give advice, right? I'm not trying to do it as a gotcha. It's just kind of.
What?
So Mark Pocan goes on and asks him, would you vaccinate your kid with chickenpox vaccine? And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is like, well, in Europe, they don't actually vaccinate for the chickenpox because they found through studies that if you vaccinate kids for chickenpox, later on in life, they're more likely to get shingles and it's more dangerous. So, and then Mark Pocan kind of moves on and says, okay, what about polio? And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. again says, look, I just want to give people the information. I don't want to say what I would do. It doesn't matter what I would do. People get to make their own decisions. That is the right answer. And that's the type of government we want. We don't want a government that's big brothering us, telling us what we have to do, what we should do. Just give us the information and let us make our own minds up. But of course, what does the government do? They give us limited information because they're afraid that we're going to make a decision they don't like. So they give us limited information to guide us into the direction and into the decision that they want us to make. That's what they do over and over and over again. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says that's going to stop, basically. We're going to just give people actual science, the real information, and they can make informed decisions as what should have been all along. At one point in the hearing, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. goes after the corruption inside the NIH and how they would direct money only to certain studies and not to others. We've been hearing this all throughout the pandemic, how they would just selectively choose what they want to focus on, ignoring everything else, and he calls it out during his hearing.
We're switching the trajectory so that we're going to really focus narrowly on chronic disease, ending the chronic disease epidemic, and then we're going to make sure that the science cannot be corrupted. That every scientific study is replicated, that the raw data for those studies is published, that the peer review for those studies is published. And we're going to focus on making sure that we get to younger scientists rather than the old boys network. And I could talk to you about scientific corruption all day long, about horror stories that we know have happened within NIH. One of those, probably the worst, is the amyloid plaque scandal. For 20 years, because of utter corruption and fraud, we were directing Alzheimer's research to one hypothesis, and any other hypothesis was shut down. We should have the cure for Alzheimer's today. We don't have it purely because of corruption at NIH.
Ms. Frankel.
We are going to have it.
And that's all changing, thank goodness, especially with Dr. Jay Bhattacharya in charge of the NIH. I really believe we're going to finally get science, real science, back in those institutions, and they're going to start really exploring all avenues. And maybe we'll actually start seeing cures for a lot of these things that we should have had cures for by now. But instead, what do? We just pump people full of pharmaceuticals, because that's where the money is. We don't want to cure things. Oh, no. That would take away our cash cow. We can't do that. So not all, those were mostly Democrats that were questioning him being insane, but it's not always Democrats. There's also a Republican here. This is Republican Mike Simpson from, unfortunately, my state of Idaho. Terrible representation here, but he's upset over the fluoride ban. So lately there have been some bans on fluoridated water. All of us are being forcibly medicated. The government has decided to put into our water supply fluoride so that we will drink it, all for what? Just to avoid cavities. That's been the claim. And now Mike Simpson, who's a dentist, says, well, wait a minute here. We're going to ban fluoride. Gee, there's going to be a lot of cavities.
If you are successful in banning fluoride, I noticed you congratulated Utah and Florida, I think, for banning it. That's up to them. They can do what they want. But we better put a lot more money into dental education because we're going to need a whole lot more dentists.
I think that, Marty McCary's concern with ingestible fluoride is that the emerging science shows the benefits to of fluoride to cares and to cavity prevention comes from topical exposures rather than it was once thought that it was systemic, that if you ingested it, that the benefit came from that. We now know that virtually all the benefit is from topical, and we can get that through mouthwashes, we can get through fluoridated toothpastes. The National Toxicity Program issued a report in August, a meta-review of all the science that now exists on fluoride, and showed a direct inverse correlation between fluoride exposure, dose-related, and lower IQ. It's an issue that we have to all be concerned with. We want high IQ kids.
Mr. Hoyer,
right now.
Mr. Hoyer.
I appreciate that.
Take your pick. Would you like to have dumb kids without cavities or smart kids with cavities? I mean, oh my gosh. But it looks like the fluoride has already made it to some brains, hasn't it? Because some people are just so stupid. I mean, of course, why would you need to drink fluoride? Of course, all you need to do is swish it around in your mouth. You just need to brush your teeth with it. You don't need to be drinking it and sticking it into every single orifice of your body as you ingest it and allow it to spread everywhere. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And this dentist, he's like, wow, you get rid of fluoride, we're going to get all these cavities. Wow, who cares if the kids are dumber? I don't want kids with cavities. I mean, it's just so absolutely insane. Last clip that I want to show you, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Calls out Representative Rosa DeLauro from Connecticut, another Democrat. And he basically says, look, you Democrats, and this has been the case, and I'm so glad he said it, and he could say it over and over again about a lot of things. I mean, this is what we saw the other day with Trump saying we're lowering prescription prices, and now Kennedy's talking about it with food dyes, saying you Democrats have talked this talk for so long, 20 years, however many years, claiming you're going to do something, and you haven't done anything. You've done nothing, and yet we've done things in the first 100 days. And that's what he's talking about when it comes to banning food dyes.
Anybody thinks that we did gold standard medicine in this country from these institutions, look at our children. They're the sickest children in the world. Lori, you say that excuse me, Congressman DeLauro, you say that you've worked for 20 years on getting food dye out. Give me credit. I got it out in 100 days.
I'll give you that credit.
All right, so let's work together and do something that we all believe in, which is have healthy kids in our country, for God's sake.
Ms. Dean.
Do that together. It's not, there's no such thing as Republican children or Democratic children. There's just kids, and we should all be concerned with them.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Dean.
Yeah, I mean, it's so completely true that this administration has done a lot of very bipartisan legislation or bipartisan executive orders. There's a lot of stuff's been it should have been bipartisan because it's stuff that Democrats said they've wanted to do. And now Trump administration is doing it. And they should be, instead of just combating and being, well, but it's Trump, it's the other side, we can't believe it. They should maybe take a hard, cold look at themselves in the mirror and say, why didn't we get this done? Maybe we should actually be productive and make change, and maybe people will vote for us, and maybe our party wouldn't dwindle into complete irrelevancy. But Democrats instead are just demonizing anything and everything. I will give it to Congressman DeLauro. She did say, I'll give you credit. You know, and he said, look, you said you've been trying to do this for 20 years. I did it in 100 days. Give me some credit. She says, I'll give you credit. I mean, absolutely. Just like Representative Ro Khanna saying, hey, look, this executive order that Trump signed in order to lower prescription drugs, let's make this law. We will put it in Congress, put it in front of Congress as written, without any changes by Democrats, as written, and let's get this thing made into law. That is the right attitude right there, and we need to see more of that. Regarding the food dye, yes, this has now been put into effect. Last month, the Health and Human Services, as well as the FDA, announced that they're basically phasing out all petroleum synthetic food dyes by the end of next year. So basically a year and a half, food manufacturers have to get all of that crappy synthetic dye out of the food. So we should see maybe Fruit Loops that aren't so bright, but they'll still have all their colors because the FDA is working hard to approve more of the natural food dyes that they're going to be able to use instead of these petroleum-based synthetic food dyes. But that is something that's happening. The food dyes are going to be gone out of the food supply by the end of next year, in a year and a half. I mean, imagine right now you've got these young couples and they're about ready to make babies. And those babies are going to be eating food. You know, if they're born 2 years from now, they're going to be eating food that is without all of that petroleum synthetic-based food dye. That is a great thing. And everybody, Democrat or Republican, should be cheering that on. And there's a lot more that could be done. And there's a lot more that I hope will be done. But this is a pretty good start. And I think this administration has done. I mean, look, you just can't, no matter how you feel about Trump or Kennedy or, you just can't, you have to admit that a lot is getting done. And I like the answers that he said here in these hearings. I thought they were good, solid answers. Like to see more of it. Hopefully this also, and I think he's winning over a lot of Democratic families as well. People who are just reading the mainstream news and saying, wow, he's being demonized, but he actually doesn't sound that bad. It's just more losing for the Democrats. That's what's going to happen as people start to wake up more and more. But good hearings, and liked the answers. So good for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on this one. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. We do live stream it every day. It's a 1-hour show. You can catch it. It is totally free. Just go to KimIversonShow.com. See you there.